That's coming up later now.
Morning.
Morning. Recording started, folks. Simon wins for having the most interesting location again. Unless someone can better that, you'll just have to all turn your cameras on. Elliot, good morning. Good to see you there.
Good morning. That's a
Hi.
great background for this meeting from Simon.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it? Angela will be with us in about 5 minutes, she said. So.
Professor in the Department of History, Princeton University.
Someone might have their radio on in the background. Do you want to mute yourself if you've got your radio on? I can see people having breakfast. I can't see any animals yet, though. My cat will come and invade at some point, naturally, because she always does. Morning, Alison. I can see you there as well. Joe, hello.
Sorry, didn't have a camera. Hello.
Don't have a camera or don't have any breakfast. Hi, Alison. Oh, I'm just seeing people pop up. Morning, Andy. Morning, John.
Morning.
Hello. But I think we'll make a start because we've got a couple of speakers this morning. We haven't done what we've done for a while in having that networking, and not since Will left, actually, if we tried to manage 7 speakers in a morning. So hello and welcome to your March meeting. And the big news is that today is our last of these virtual meetings. From next month, the plan is for us to meet in person. Next month on the 21st, we will be at Fareham College. In May, we're meeting at the National Oceanography Centre, and it's going to be a really interesting meeting. I think we're going to have some colleagues from Finland joining us who are interested in talking to businesses locally about how they can work together. And then, without stealing anyone's thunder, Andrew and Faye, in June, we're hoping that our meeting will be at the Seawork trade show. So I can't tell you how much I am looking forward to meeting you and others that have been joining these meetings for the last 18 months. But that's the big news, really. That's the headline. I've got a few other updates, which if I just run through them now, because it's probably as well to do that whilst people are joining late. We have a date booked at Solent University to run a maritime themed session for our careers leaders in the Solent. Now, careers leaders, forgive me if you know this, but if you don't, I'm just going to run through it really quickly. Every secondary school and college, FE college in the Solent, every state school and college has to have a named careers leader, and that careers leader can be the careers advisor, but often there's someone who sits on the senior leadership team. So it might be the assistant head, the deputy head, or the vice principal, or whatever. When I worked at EC College, I was a careers leader there. We are organising a maritime themed seminar for the careers leaders. There are 101 of them. It is going to be on the morning of the 9th of May. And I am looking for probably 10, maybe 12 local businesses to come with a stand to engage and to have conversations with those careers leaders. I've probably got the speakers tied up, but if there's something really interesting that you want to share about clean maritime or future tech or changing qualifications or whatever, do reach out to me. But if that's something that you would like to be a part of and have an opportunity to talk to those careers leaders, I'm really hoping that after 2 years of them also only having virtual meetings, that we'll get a really good turnout for that. Solent University are hosting us at the Spark building. It's going to be 9:30 till 12:30, and then with an optional staying on to have a tour around the simulation centre if you'd like to do that from 12:30 till 1:30. Lots of you have obviously been to sea already, so you're maybe not so interested in the simulation centre, but for others you'd be welcome to join us. So if that is something that you'd be interested in supporting, if you want to drop me a message either in the chat or by email, then I can talk to you about the details. It's not something that you have to pay for or whatever. I just need to make sure that we've got a good representation of the different industries locally, so that we can help these careers leaders better understand the sector. So that's the 9th of May if you are free. The Maritime UK awards were last week. I was up in Glasgow with my other hat on, my other half of my job, and Solent LEP picked up the Clean Maritime Enabler Award, which is just fantastic news. So we were delighted with that. I think I mentioned the last time that we have our maritime network. We're also developing a construction network within the Solent LEP, and we have a face-to-face meeting with construction stakeholders on the 30th of March at St Vincent's. Now they are properly breakfast meetings. This is 7:30 till 9:30 with a little bit of breakfast thrown in. If your business also works in the construction sector and you're interested in talking with those partners, get in touch with me, and there's a link on it. It's on the calendar, actually. It's on the Solent LEP calendar, and that takes you to the registration form. But that's a face-to-face meeting if you're interested in that. That's bringing together construction employers and education, actually, to make sure that the skills people pathway is robust, and we know what we need to do locally. And then just once again, so next month, the 21st of April at Fareham College, in person, we've got capacity for about 100 people. So I'm hoping that I can't wait actually for that to happen. May at the National Oceanography Centre, which should be awesome, and then June at SeaWork. So, and that will be the 23rd. Andrew, I'm looking to you just to nod. That's definitely the date. It's the Thursday. Yep. At SeaWork in Southampton. Anyway, so delighted that you're all with us this morning. That's brilliant. We've got 2 sets of speakers today. We're joined by 2 colleagues, Elliot and Angela from the Department for Transport. There is a new transport skills consultation which is currently live. I'm not the expert on that, so I'm going to hand over to them. And we'll take, in the normal way, if you want to ask questions in the chat, we'll pick up those questions at the end. And then we have Faye and Andrew that are going to talk to us about the SeaWork trade show and their industry and so on. So without further ado, Elliot and Angela, can I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to this meeting today. My name's Elliot. I work for the Transport Labour Market and Skills team with my colleague Angela, and we're here today to talk to you about the call for views and ideas and the new task force that's been launched as part of that work. So if you just give me a moment, I'm just going to share my screen and start presenting. 1 second. So hopefully you can all see a PowerPoint slide now. Perfect. Thanks for the thumbs up. Bear with me a second. Right. Okay. I'm sure some of you are probably aware of our department's work in the skills space. But for those that don't, I just want to give you a sort of quick overview of the history of our team's work, and in particular how it's evolved over the last sort of 6 years. Obviously, that's not to say no work it sort of didn't happen beyond sort of 2015, of course. So back in sort of 2016, the government produced the Transport Infrastructure and Skills Strategy. It sort of set some important ambitions arising from the research that was done for that around increasing the number of apprenticeships in the industry, along with some quite challenging diversity targets as well. The strategic Transport Apprenticeship Task Force, which I'm sure some of you are very aware of, or STAT as it was known, was tasked to drive through those ambitions around apprenticeship starts. And that sort of last progress report on STAT in 2020, there was a commitment to update and broaden that work, and certainly broaden the remit. I think it's a really good time because if you factor in the pandemic, the post-Brexit settlement, and the potential legislative reforms arising from the Skills for Jobs white paper, it's a really good time to be sort of starting this work. Our particular approach involved the publication in February of the Transport Labour Market and Skills Call for Views and Ideas, which is essentially an overview of the challenges and opportunities in the sector with an accompanying consultation, or sort of quasi call for evidence. That response to the Call for Views and Ideas paper will help provide a focus for the work of an industry led task force. That task force, the Transport Employment and Skills Task Force, TEST, do you like those acronyms? It's an industry-led group that will be leading in this workspace. I don't know if you know, I'm hoping you can't hear drilling in the background. I'm having windows done, and typically in the way these meetings work, they've started drilling just now, so I'm hoping you can't hear that. Going back to the task force, I think we're really lucky to have Rachel Skinner chairing the task force. She's currently an executive director at the global engineering consultancy firm WSP, and she's also an ex-president of the Institution of Civil Engineers. She recently received a CBE as well, but we nabbed her before she got that CBE. I think she'd have been more busy otherwise. Rachel is amazing. She's really passionate about ensuring the industry has the right sort of future skills it needs to be a success. So I'm really pleased that we've managed to get her chairing. As well as that consultation response, there's 4 cross-cutting themes and sort of 5 generalized pillars that will help set the direction of that task force. Those themes, those cross-cutting themes, they inevitably involve other government departments and other industries. Those cross-cutting themes are sort of net zero, levelling up, increasing our departments and industry's global reach, and improving the sort of skills and diversity of the transport workforce. I'm hoping that those challenges that you see there, you can see them as opportunities as well, and I'm sure you're probably quite familiar with those themes from your work. Future skills, I think both government and industry probably need to come to a shared understanding about what skills those actually are and what will be required for our future transport system. Sort of climate change, adjustments in working patterns catalysed by the pandemic, increasing automation, artificial intelligence. That does present a challenge, but also a really good opportunity for skills development. Training and employment. As an ex-teacher myself, I have a very sort of acute appreciation for how confusing the qualification landscape actually is. Those technological shifts that we're witnessing in transport now need a robust, flexible education and training system that's easy to navigate. So as I said, as an ex-teacher, I really do appreciate those challenges. Promoting careers in transport, that's another key one here. I think the sector is fighting demographics here. I think the ONS, they looking at the transport and storage sector, I think 60% is over 40 right now, and I'm sure you're aware of those stats anyway, but it does highlight the fact that the government does need to work constructively with industry and yourselves and respond to these challenges by developing, you know, evidence-based approaches to promoting careers in the transport sector, difficult though that is. Boosting diversity. I think this is one that everyone has around their sort of corporate social responsibility as well. I mean, if we don't sort of seek to better understand industry's diversity issues, then, you know, we're missing a lot of talent there, and that will inevitably sort of compound longer term sort of skills issues. And the final sort of, I guess, opportunity and challenge is that issue around building a good evidence base. We need a good evidence base to make good policy decisions, which can also be evaluated too. In terms of how that task force is going to work, we want it to be as broad as we possibly can. We want representatives from across the transport sector, and we will be finalising that in the coming months. After that, TESS will be able to sort of task its work groups, which are broadly aligned to those 5 pillars I just outlined. I have no doubt that some of those work streams will also overlap. Our ask from you, though, is essentially to promote the call for views and ideas, promote the work of the task force, and I'm sort of opening the floor to any questions, really. Thank you very much for listening. Shall I? I tell you what I will do. I will pop the call for views and ideas.
I've done it.
Oh, you've done it. Oh, thank you very much, Angela. Thank you. Sorry about that. So let's have a look. Does anyone have any questions at all?
On mute. I've got a question. If I can start it off. I've heard, and this might be slightly controversial, so forgive me if it is, but I've heard that when thinking about transport, obviously we're all aware of the HGV driver shortage last year. And there was a lot of talk about ageing workforce. There was a lot of talk about Brexit and the impact that that had had. But I also started to hear things about working conditions and kind of the kind of contracts that HGV drivers have, and the way that as a country we treat people differently. I received 1 or 2 emails from people saying, you know, if we're driving on the continent, there's showers, there's this, there's that, etc. at service stations. And I'll be honest with you, it was never something that I'd really considered before. And I wonder if there's a bigger picture here about what the jobs are like in, you know, what the actual working conditions are like. If I compare that to maritime, we know that people talk about being away at sea, particularly if they're on long postings and being away from their family and being away from home or whatever. But in a lot of cases, they might do 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. So whilst you're away for a solid 3 weeks, you're then home again for 3 weeks. I wonder what consideration has been given to what it's like to work in transport, and whether that's part of what you're trying to find out.
Yeah, I mean that obviously that's one of the sort of pillars we want to look at, sort of promoting careers in transport and looking around the sort of negative perceptions in the transport sector in particularly in some industries. HGVs, I think that was the shortage was sort of symptomatic of a few things, and one of them was probably negative perceptions. There's a lot of work going on in the department around supply chains, and there's a future of freight strategy coming up quite soon. So it's a really good time to actually start this work, which is why we're trying to encourage as many stakeholders to feed into our call for views and ideas as possible, because we're not saying we have all the answers now. I don't think we do, but we need to have a really good understanding as to why those sort of negative perceptions start, and what we can do to mitigate against that, and actually work with industry to improve those conditions. I think, you know, we have seen in the news quite often how the conditions for HGV drivers are not as good as on the continent, so there is clearly some work to do in that space. Angela, I don't know if you want to come in on that one too.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is you know, where we've come to, and sort of hopefully we'll see the benefit of having this kind of really cross-sectoral kind of strategic task force that kind of overlays all the different kind of sectors within the transport industry, because we know that there's lots of great work going on you know, within the maritime sector. Our colleagues who sort of more on the freight and logistics side, you've got the same in rail, you've got the same in aviation. There's a lot of commonalities, and you know, things like sort of looking at working conditions, aging workforce, you know, the barriers and sort of, you know, potential kind of issues within the culture. So what we want to do is sort of really bring all of that kind of, you know, learning and best practice together, and sort of look at, yeah, potentially what it is. And I think it kind of sits with a little bit within that kind of future skills space as well, because there is that kind of, I think there's a real change in sort of, you know, people's expectations and sort of aspirations, you know, what they're kind of willing to accept. And you know, I think sort of the transport industry needs to be, it wants to be competitive in the future. Things like working conditions, and you know, sort of making things kind of not necessarily luxurious, but you know, more comfortable, and you know, just, you know, in particular, it sort of, you know, plays into the diversity piece as well, because we know it does tend to often be women who are put off these careers. So yeah, I think it's sort of just, hopefully it will be something that comes out in some of the recommendations the task force make.
I think the other thing is that with my careers background, I think I wouldn't like to say how many careers fairs I've attended or run over the years, both. And I can't say with any honesty that I've seen transport companies or logistics companies attending those sorts of events. You will have bigger companies of which the logistics is one of the business functions. Genuinely, I don't ever remember seeing someone at a careers fair talking to young people about careers in transport. And I attended a DFT meeting probably 18 months ago, actually, where they were talking about transport skills. And there was a lot of people from different industries that were saying, you know, young people and job seekers just don't know about our jobs. And I sort of sat with my hands over my mouth for a bit. It was a virtual meeting, obviously. And then I said, come on, you've got to be more proactive about this. What we've done in my other half of my job is managing the careers and outreach programme for Maritime UK. We take that information proactively out to schools, out to colleges, and through the programme, through our Careers Professionals Network. And I wonder if I remember saying at the time, and I spoke to someone in the aviation team actually, because they kind of said, oh, we need a careers and outreach programme a bit like yours. I think it's easy to assume that careers advisors and teachers and tutors and work coaches in Job Centre Plus understand about entry pathways. In reality, they get a never-ending list of emails that they, you know, if you're working in a school, you haven't got time to open all the emails, let alone open all the attachments or attend the workshops or whatever. So I think there is a place for being a little bit more proactive. Gary's here. Gary, you've got you've asked a question, I see. Do you want to ask that out loud? Go for it.
Yeah, it wasn't really a question, it was more an observation, Lorna, but just picking up on what you've just said. It's not actually strictly true. We attended a careers fair last week, but the issue you have as an industry is the entry level is too difficult from a school leaver predominantly, or people finishing education to get into HGV. There's a time lapse, so they're not really much use to us until they're able to get a Class 1 license. So at 21 we can use them, but between 18 and 21 it's incredibly difficult. The other problem you have with careers fairs are the reality is, as an industry, we're not coordinated enough. Individual companies to invest in going to a careers fair to say, come to our industry, is incredibly onerous and difficult for an individual organisation. What it needs to be is a coordinated body responding on our behalf. And we've not been particularly good at that as an industry. So I think that my point in the chat was really, we need a coordinated response to engage with the future workforce, and right now we don't have that, and that's, I think, a lack of industry awareness, a lack of communication between the further education bodies and ourselves. I think everyone's all well-meaning. I think everyone's sort of the constituent parts are there, in that I think we need employees want to come to us, and further education bodies and government want to support all that, but for whatever reason we can't seem to connect those three things. So I think that's probably where our best efforts are spent, in terms of how do we get that engagement between all those three interested parties. So that was a bit of a ramble, but hopefully that made a bit of sense.
No, it did. It absolutely did. And what's really interesting is that what you've said about that delay, that 18 to 21-year-old delay. I mean, I'm showing my age now, but I remember when I was at college, and this is going to sound terribly sexist, but do bear in mind it was the 80s, and all the lads were watching Convoy, and then they all wanted to be HGV drivers, but they didn't want to be HGV drivers in the UK, they wanted to do it in America. But it was that raising of awareness, and it became, I really am old, but it became such an attractive option. So are people joining the industry, Gary, at 21 though? Do they come in at 21, or do they does it tend to be older?
It tends to be older. So it's interesting, the dynamic that used to exist, and I'm a lot older than you, Lorna, so I can remember when it was attractive and the guys used to turn up on a Monday and disappear and come back on a Friday, and that was the attraction, really. That perception that you were a knight of the road and you're on your own and my boss didn't know where I was. The industry's changed significantly now with double shifting and trackers and cameras and blah blah blah. So actually that romance has disappeared, unfortunately. But what we get now is there are very few people that, if you go, literally, I was in a school last week presenting, and most of them, bear in mind, we're based in Southampton, had no idea what logistics were. And that's a worry when you say, pictorially, you can see supply chains and logistics on your doorstep, and yet we still haven't communicated that messaging. So I think that was disappointing. The problem you get is the entry level for us. To be a class 1 driver, you can do things like we do a warehouse to wheels program where we can employ 18, but it's disproportionate. We have 220 employees in Southampton and 120 of those are drivers, 70 admin staff and about 40 warehouse guys. So the ability for me to bring people in prior to their being useful to us is incredibly difficult, and that will be the same for most people in our industry. The apprenticeship program, the reason there's been quite a small take up of that is it's too long, too onerous and too expensive. That's not fair. Most of the potential employees really only want one thing, which is the acquisition of a license. So then they can trade, they can actually work and start earning money. And the problem we get is, the minute they get that acquisition, they'll shoot off to our competitors who will pay 20p an hour, slightly more than we do, because they're not contributing to the training elements. So as an industry, we've got a lot of work to do. And I'm blaming the industry just as much as I am everybody else. It's easy to sit back and say everyone else has got it wrong, but as an industry, we've got it wrong for a very long time.
It's really interesting. And I guess that, Angela and Elliot, that's exactly why you're putting the consultation out there, because you need to talk to people about what's happening on the ground. Matt, or unless you want to come back on that, Elliot, sorry, you were just putting your hand up, I think, or putting yourself off mute.
I was just about to say it is about that sort of awareness building. It has to be more than careers fairs. I as a sort of teacher, ex-head of science in a secondary school, I've worked in a college. I know kids don't make decisions based on a careers fair. They don't tend to make decisions based on one talk. Embedding work-related learning into the curriculum is a real challenge for schools because, as Lorna quite rightly pointed out, there is a lot of sort of pressures on what teachers have to deliver. So it's really important we start using the existing qualification systems to try and get across industry's message. The T levels present a very good opportunity, but there are clearly challenges there. So ultimately, this is why this call for views and ideas is extremely important here, and it's why this task force is extremely important. Our chair is very delivery orientated, so it's really important for Rachel Skinner that we're able to have something that is tangible at the end of all this. So I completely take these points on. Thank you.
And I think the other thing that I would throw in here actually is we've talked about this from a port's point of view, I guess, in the past. The Careers Colleges Trust are an organisation that are bringing in a new full-time pathway in colleges. I think they're working with 9 or 10 colleges, but what the local one is Eastleigh actually, and they're bringing in a brand new full-time course, or 2 full-time courses, level 2, level 3 logistics and international supply chain pathway. So that's an option for a young person coming out of school to go in and do a technical professional qualification, go straight to the level 3 or work through the level 2 as appropriate. But certainly to raise their understanding about the broader logistics picture. Obviously, from Maritime, we're talking about the logistics that support the ports, clearly. But the logistics, whether that's road, rail, air, or whatever, around that as well. So, Gary, what I'll do, if you're not already in touch with the Careers Colleges Trust and the contact at Eastleigh College, I'll put you in touch with them, because I think you'd be interested in talking to them about this new course, probably.
We already are. Yeah.
Oh, you are. Excellent.
Yeah,
Good.
that was the careers fair we went to last week, was Eastleigh College to support the what they're currently doing. So yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So that is something that is happening, and it's broader than just a careers fair or just a single employers talk at an assembly or whatever. It is about providing that pathway, and it's good that Eastleigh have chosen to be part of that offer. As I say, I think there's 9 or 10 colleges that are involved in the pilot. We'll have to see how that goes.
Which is why it's the qualifications are extremely important. They can provide a route into those sectors.
Yeah.
Just to take, I've just seen Simon's point in the chat there, the vision of the sector. That's what the task force is for. We're not going to pretend that we have a clear vision, but what we need to do is you need to use the task force to establish that vision with industry, with relevant stakeholders. That's incredibly important. So that's a really good point that Simon's made there in the chat.
Okay. Don't know if everyone's seen this. This is about what's the vision, where do you want to go? So Angela, sorry.
I was just going to say as well, I think that's where having the sort of the pillars, if you look back at the slides Elliot presented, that aligned to the kind of strategic priorities, which are sort of across DFT, so every element of the business and what the sort of Department for Transport is trying to achieve, very much tied into the decarbonisation agenda, to the global competitiveness agenda, to levelling up. So it's kind of making sure that whatever we're doing on the sort of skills and workforce side of things is very much aligned to sort of the bigger picture. So yeah.
And Angela, you and I had a conversation, I think last week, we were talking about the breadth of this survey and all the different parts of transportation that were involved. Now, bus is part of this. It's road, rail, air, maritime, public transport.
We put it out to the whole of the
buses,
transport industry. Yeah, and I think at some point we will need to sort of have some considerations about scope, which is, I guess, will be a question for the task force, because you know, we probably can't address, definitely can't address absolutely every single sort of qualification, role, you know, aspect of the sector. So it will be really focusing on those where we know that there's potentially kind of big challenges around sort of the future technologies, skill shortages, that kind of thing. So.
Yeah.
But we've kept it broad deliberately for now.
So, and we're not just talking about HGV drivers. We can be talking about van deliveries as well, which is something that's changed significantly. I think COVID's had an impact on that in people's behaviour in terms of online shopping and all the rest of it. I'm interested to see if there's anyone in the meeting today that's been trying to recruit someone to support their logistics and has had difficulties with a current or a recent vacancy. I don't know, beyond in some of the maritime businesses, really. If you, sorry, is that someone saying yes? Oh, no, it wasn't. Matt Beecham, do you want to talk about what you're doing at Manpower? I think that would be useful.
Sure. Morning, everyone, and actually also might link in with what you just said there about recruiting. I can't talk on behalf, you know, I can't talk as an employee recruiting. I can talk, you know, as our role working with the organisations. But to touch on really with regard to drivers, first of all, I 100% agree with, I think you've mentioned Lorna and Elliot as well earlier in the conversation. You were talking about you know, working conditions for drivers, and I think Gary mentioned it as well. I'm not, excuse me, I'm not directly involved in Manpower's driving academy, but from what I hear from my colleagues, and actually one of our consultants within our logistics team was a driver, and then he's worked throughout transport manager, etc. Now he's sort of recruiting in the sector, and he always refers back to it. You know, conditions for the drivers, you know, whilst you know in the UK compared to you know, the continent, but the driver academy was set up really, as I've mentioned there in the chat, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, to help obviously tackle the massive shortage with drivers in the industry. We've partnered up, not with a training provider, a training, I'm not sure what the word is, but a training broker, if you like, that then use a number of providers. It's self-funded by the individuals. Of Manpower are kind of sort of with them from day one, and then at the end of the journey in their qualification, we're now working with companies, and I certainly don't want to use the word a guaranteed job for the individual, but there are jobs and job interviews for those candidates at the end of the journey. And there was, which I was aware of this earlier, back in the last year or the start of this year, there was some funded awarded, quite substantial amounts of money that were awarded from the government. Manpower were part of a consortium. I think it was about 6 or 7 million been awarded for boot camps to push on for this sector. And I think someone on the call a minute ago as well, actually, underrepresented groups as well. So feeding into this driving academy, there's actually a women in driving, women drivers academy as well that's now been set up.
Oh, I think we're losing you, Matt. Is it just me that's losing him, or are other people?
You still hear me?
Ah, that's better. Yeah.
Yeah. That's I guess that's a very sort of short summary of the driver academy. With regards to your other point about you know, people experience recruiting, and I'm not, you know, so for myself, I solely recruit within freight. So part of a team of sort of 65 consultants around the UK, all specialising in different areas of logistics. So for myself, live and work in Southampton, obviously Southampton docks on our doorstep. From my point of view, it is, and this is from freight rather than drivers, but the industry in general, I guess, there's a chronic shortage across, you know, lots of different sectors. Gary's mentioned, and other people, how we attract people to this industry, the careers, you know, the careers fair at Eastleigh. I was on a call with Rachel yesterday at a career college about, you know, this new qualification, and there just doesn't seem to be, I think I'm echoing what's already been said here, there doesn't really seem to be a joined up approach to how to attract people to this industry.
That's really useful. Thank you, Matt. Can I just go back to something you said there? You talked about your transport manager having started out as a driver.
Yeah.
I ask as a layperson, as someone that doesn't really understand it, and perhaps Gary, you could help with this as well, but what are the progression opportunities? So if someone comes into transport and they start out as a driver, be that a class 1 HGV, or whether they're working in a smaller vehicle to start off with, or whatever, what are the opportunities? Where's the framework for people to build a career? And is that so that it's not just you get a job and you keep that job and that kind of level of income for the rest of your life, but where it goes? I don't know if either yourself or Gary could help me with just my understanding of that, and whether that's part of the issue, that people don't see it as an industry to progress within.
Do you want me to jump on that one, Matt?
Yeah, I was going to say, I can tell you the reason why my colleague left, because pure and simple, he didn't want to be doing the hours anymore. He wanted an office job. That is his reason. I think Gary will be best placed to answer with regards to progression, I think.
Yeah, and answer your question, Lorna, you'd not be surprised to hear so we've got 120 drivers and I've got 1 transport manager. So the reality is that pathway is always incredibly limited. Picking up Matt's point, predominantly the issue around the workforce for drivers, and the reason we're losing people in the industry and have done over the last 12, 18 months more so than ever before, is historically it's been long hours and low pay. And the recognition of that skill set, I think, in the wider commercial environment, it's such that it's not been, you know, I remember people outside applauding the supply chain not so long ago. And prior to that, probably no one's ever even heard of or ever thought about a lorry driver. And I think what we had is we've got a sort of a wave of opportunity to pick up on that. But that, I think, is diminishing by the day. And I think it's, as an industry, again, we've lost some of the opportunity to get people engaged, because the reality is the average working week is probably 45 to 50 hours and they'll take 35 grand a year, something like that. So it's a reasonable wage. But for people with aspirations beyond that, then it's normally a stepping stone. So the reason we've got an aging workforce, I think in our organisation, it's just under 50 now as the average. But that includes a huge amount of new employees on the warehouse to wheels program that we've done that are averaging 25, 30, which has dragged that down. 18 months ago, that would have been over 50. So it is a concern. We're not unique. That's an industry problem, I think. So hopefully that answers your question. It is a big part of the problem. There is no aspirational growth for most people, unfortunately.
No, and I think actually that's potentially impacted by the improvement in careers education and careers learning at schools and colleges, where young people are coming through and they're talking about, you know, understanding that the power is with them to build a career and to affect their outcomes, I guess. I just thought it'd be really interesting to go, Andrew and Faye, you're obviously representing the sort of commercial workboats, etc., etc. What do you hear from the companies that you're working with about? Do they talk to you about the difficulty in the logistics and supporting those other business functions at all? Is it something that comes up in conversation?
Yes, it is, Lorna. Look, I think it was really interesting to see the presentation on the transport task force. And I think the underlying demographics in commercial marine are pretty identical. And I guess that would be your experience as well, you know, with an aging workforce and the difficulty of attracting young people through the apprenticeship route.
Yeah, I think yeah. Well, I think if this conversation has done nothing else, it's underpinned the need for your consultation, hasn't it? So I hope that's been useful, Elliot and Angela. We will continue to promote the links to the consultation document to encourage, because obviously today's conversations are great, but you need them. You need people to take part in that online survey, don't you? So is there anything that either of you want to come back with just before we move on to our next speakers?
I guess I've got a controversial question when it comes to working conditions, because I partly think it's a case of people shifting the expectations of, you know, entitlement to, you know, leisure time and their family life. But do you think the sort of logistics and wider transport sector, is it commercially affordable to offer conditions which are maybe fewer hours, different shift patterns? Is that commercially affordable for the industry, do you think?
Do you want me to pick that one up?
Yes, please.
Good. It's a great point, Elliot. It's interesting because doing a couple of surveys that we have done and talking to some of the staff, one of the key things they want is that flexible working. The reality is, when you're in a truck, you're in a truck. And if you're going to Manchester, it takes as long as it takes to get to Manchester. And when you're in Manchester, without being flippant, the only way you have to drive back home again. That's how it works. But you're absolutely right. Some of the observations we've made are giving people flexibility about which days they want to work. So gone are the days, I think, you know, it's a 48-hour week, and that's what you do, and that's the minimum we require. And probably on average, the guys were doing 10 years ago 60 hours a week. That was probably what they're doing. That's dropped now to the nearer the 45 to 50. But it's actually a balance, because a lot of the existing individuals we've got, they're 45 plus, actually work 45, 50 hours because they want the pay that comes with it. So I think that they'd all like to do less hours and be more flexible, but they want to, because it's not a hugely, you know, well-paid role, unfortunately. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of work as an industry we've got to do, but that will actually come back to us as consumers. We'll have to pay more for that activity, and that's the long and short of it. And it's an incredibly competitive market. We spent years and years beating each other up on prices. So we have to be a bit stronger. And I think it'll be the supply and demand process, which you're probably seeing now for the first time for a long time in the industry, that rates are going up significantly. And most of that is going back where it should have done, and always should have done, back to the drivers. So give you an indication, we paid 18% increases last year to the drivers, and I'm anticipating it will be certainly very high single digits this year. So it's just realigning the industry where it should have been, and had, you know, it's allowed itself to be over the last 10 years. So right now, commercially, it's not as viable as I'd like it to be, but I do think that's the pathway. I think that's a significant part of the change.
Cheers, Gary. That's really useful.
Anything from anybody else before we move on? No, I think that's been a really useful discussion. I hope it's been useful for you, Elliot and Angela. Obviously, we're recording today, and we we get high levels of viewing of the recorded meetings where people can't make it and they go to other things. So we'll continue to promote the consultation. We look forward to seeing how the work falls out of that, and Solent LEP will be very interested in supporting you with this. My head's saying, well, we've got a maritime business network, we're developing a construction business network. Perhaps we need to be doing a logistics one as well, given that we've got the ports and we've got the motorways and we've got the airport and all the rail that's in and around Eastleigh and so on as well. Maybe that's something that we need to have a think about, but I'll take that back to base and have a conversation with them. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your presentation and your patience listening to all our comments and our questions and so on. And good luck with the work ahead.
Thank you very much. I've just popped in the chat a bit of stuff on Rachel Skinner and some of the press that came out in early Feb on that one as well. So thank you, everyone.
Perfect. We'll add that to, there's an email that goes out to the whole network afterwards, and we'll add that to that as well so that people have got the information. But really grateful for your time. And I hope your windows get fitted. And Angela, I hope everyone in your family is really well really soon. So thank you. It's been a difficult week for both of you, but much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. So I hope you found that useful, folks. I certainly did. I've learned all sorts about logistics this morning that I didn't know, and what we kind of need to know that in order to support the maritime sector locally as well. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Andrew and to Faye now, who are going to talk to us about their organisation, about their industry, and about the trade show that's coming up in June. Over to you two.
Hello, I think we've got a short video to have a look at so we can see what SeaWork looks like.
Is my screen sharing okay?
Yeah.
It is, but there's no
Brilliant.
sound. I don't
No,
know.
I'll press play and hopefully that will work. Bear with.
Okay. Thank you, Sophie.
I think we're finished.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, we seem to be a fair way away from the screen. This is sort of set up for our boardroom. I hope you can hear and see us. I'm Andrew Webster. I'm the Chief Executive of Mercator Media. We're based in Fareham. We're the producers of the SeaWork exhibition and its sister magazine, Maritime Journal. This is Faye Reeve, who is the exhibition manager who makes it happen and who can help with any questions you have after our short presentation. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you about SeaWork. And after our 2-year COVID hiatus, the 23rd annual SeaWork will be on the 21st to 23rd of June in its home at Mayflower Park in Southampton. For people who haven't visited, SeaWork is about working on and around the water and how to do this productively, safely and securely. It's a business-to-business exhibition that incorporates all the services, vessels, plant and equipment that are required to develop and maintain our ports and harbours and the coastal infrastructure. It encompasses all types of vessels and workboat operations, from towing and salvage and dredging, pilot boats, the ancillary services of security, safety and navigation, and all aspects of marine civil engineering and coastal maintenance, and all the equipment and services that are needed to carry out those works. We held the first sea work in the port of Southampton in 1998 with, I think, 80 odd exhibitors, and this year we will have around about 650, I think, in our exhibition halls on the quayside. And uniquely, it's the only commercial marine exhibition in the world to have over 75 vessels and items of floating plant on our pontoons that are available to try. They range from 30-metre wind farm support vessels, CTVs, jack-up barges and pilot boats through to commercial rigs. We expect around about 7,700 visitors from about 70 countries from around Europe and the rest of the world. They would typically be at company director level, marine operations managers, marine engineers, technicians, and harbour masters. Our surveys show that around about 85% of them will influence or authorise the purchasing decisions of their organisations. SeaWork has also developed a big learning component for attendees. We produce a series of in-person and virtual half-day conferences from uncrewed service vessels and their growing role in the commercial marine market, hybrid and electric propulsion and real-world implementation for commercial marine, and our Get Set for Workboat 2050 series we have been producing with the Workboat Association and the Society of Maritime Industries on navigating the waters of decarbonisation in the workboat industry. In fact, Series 6 we produced with Maritime UK up at COP26 in Glasgow, which was great. We also have a series of business briefings. Probably the most interesting is this program will include events from the new National Shipbuilding Office and the MOD team, the UK Defence and Equipment and Support, who are responsible for the purchase and maintenance of all small vessel and equipment for all three services. And they use SeaWork as the annual industry day to meet with both existing and potential new clients. And the third leg is Department of International Trade, the opportunity to pick up some advice about how you can boost your overseas trade. I think especially this year is going to be a great opportunity to find out more firsthand about the government's new vessel building program, which was presented last week in outline anyway. SeaWork is also local to us. It's important for the Solent region and Maritime UK as a whole. Over a third of all our exhibitors have Solent addresses, and SeaWork facilitates tens of millions of pounds of orders, both directly and as part of the supply chain. SeaWork is also about jobs and employment. All aspect of our work, wherever we are, is increasingly front and centre is job apprentices and training. I doubt that there's, from we were discussing before, I doubt there is a maritime business in the Solent region that is not thinking hard about staffing and HR. commercial marine needs to show itself as an attractive, multifaceted sector to attract trainees and graduates. We do have an amazing built-in advantage, and that is the natural magnetic attraction of working with the sea and on the coast. And sea work and its exhibitors, associations and supporters can be a great showcase to put forward our argument and case. We're also working with stakeholders to make Thursday the 23rd of June the day to focus on careers and colleges. We're especially delighted to be starting work with Maritime UK and the Solent to develop this program. And as we laid out, it'll also be a great opportunity to host this monthly meeting, so you can come and see what we do, as well as the variety and range that is the commercial marine business, which is sometimes a bit hidden. So to summarise, the commercial marine sector, as reflected by Seawork, is a vital facilitator to trade, security and maintenance of our coastline, ports and harbours, security and safety on the water. And attracting and maintaining talent will be a vital part of achieving this. So going forward, Seawork is on our doorstep. We have and produce an world influential event in Southampton at the centre of commercial marine that brings businesses together, trading opportunities and new ideas. Thank you very much. And if you have, it was a bit of a whirl through, but if you have any questions of us, please.
I'll start off the questions because I normally do, if that's okay. You just said it's a sometimes hidden industry. When people, again, just referring to my careers background, if I talk to young people or even contacts at schools, and 2 years ago when I started this job, I would say, tell me about the maritime sector. And if I was really, really lucky and it was a good day, I would get told about cruise ships, cargo ships, ports on a good day. And I do remember one time when a young man talked to me about the RNLI. And that's about it. You just don't get people talking about cable layers or dredgers or crew transfer vessels or, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, it's a genuine question, but I wonder how many people in the Solent are employed in commercial workboats? What sort of numbers it is? Do you know that? And I'm really sorry if that's putting you on the spot.
No. It depends how you segment it. If you look at a job like, say, the one we've seen, like the beach replenishment project that goes on every couple of years on Bournemouth seafront, the value of that project and the number of people involved that firstly reclaiming the sand onto the dredger and then delivering it ashore and then pushing it on the beach, or a project where we're laying a new cable to the Isle of Wight, or repairing the revetments around Mayflower Park, which we were discussing yesterday. It's a sector that isn't as, and I think this reflects a problem a bit, it's a sector that's not as easy to segment as, say, leisure marine, where the end is the vessel, the boat, where in commercial marine, the vessel and the equipment are there to facilitate the job that's being done. They're not the end in itself. The value is in the project, not in the vessel.
Yeah.
It's like a wind farm boat. It's just to get people out and push up against the pillar. whereas the real value is in the generating the energy. So
Yeah.
it's not an easy question to answer. I'm sorry, that's not a very helpful answer.
No, it's, can I just ask a couple of questions about the trade show then, just to confirm that people are able to visit the trade show. That's not a, it's not a paid ticket. Obviously people who are exhibiting are paying to be there, but visitors can come along. Our network who maybe come into our meeting on the day, will they need to register with you guys directly, or will they be registering through us in the normal way, and we'll provide you with the names for security purposes?
We can do it either way, but we're trying to do all of the non-touch registration. So at cwork.com, where we're creating a 365-day community is our next project. If you sign up for that community, you will also be able to get a QR code to scan your way into CWork as well, and that is at no charge, in exchange for your name and some brief demographics. So
if you want to pop a link for that into the chat maybe, and people could pick it up from here, and then we'll include it in the post-meeting communications as well. Has anyone else got any questions that they want to ask, or have we just that's been a bit of an information dump, I guess. We've learned a lot about it. Anyone else got anything that they wanted to contribute or to ask before I ask my next question? Because I've always got loads of them, obviously. Way back at school, on all my reports it says Lorna's great, but she talks too much. Andy, you've just put your camera on. Is that because you've got a question? Good morning.
Hello. Yeah, hiding out there. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks so much for the presentation, and to you for actually getting that into the meeting. I think it's brilliant. It's one of those great big obvious things that you forget to put in your diary, if you know what I mean. So could I just say, is it possible to get your contact details directly as organisers, just to sort of open up a separate dialogue about interest in it? Basically, we're a very big member organisation, like everyone is, but we've got quite a broad network. It'd be interesting to get them involved clearly and raise any interest in case anyone's not engaged yet, and B, just to understand a little bit more about the event. But I don't particularly want to bog the meeting down in that.
Yeah, sure. We'll just put an email address up now.
Yeah, if you put a link in there or something, if you haven't already, forgive me on, and I'll just pick that up. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, perfect. I've popped my email address in the chat, so if anyone's got any questions about the event itself or anything else, you can just send me an email direct, no problem at all.
Great, thank you very much. Sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna.
Can I, no problem. Faye, can I ask you, you talked about Thursday being Careers Day, and obviously our meeting's going to be first thing in the morning that day. What other things have you got planned for that day? Are there things that any of our network can support you with for that, or are you all set up with all your activities? How's that day going to work?
So the plan at the moment, and it is quite a broad plan because we are asking for your help in reaching the schools, colleges, young people, because we want to actually get them in. We have got a training and careers pavilion at the event that's got about 10 to 12 exhibitors on it that offer apprenticeships. They can talk to them about jobs, all sorts of things. And you know, not just in that pavilion, people can walk around and see all the different areas of the industry represented. We plan to have some sessions in our conference rooms to follow your sessions. So in the morning, we're hoping to have some sessions for the young people, for the students to come and find out what opportunities there are for learning, for apprenticeships, for jobs. And then in the afternoon, we were hoping to have some sessions that were more based around retraining, you know, and older people that are looking for a new career or to change of direction. We've got an organisation called Surfca coming along who are going to talk about ex-Army, Navy people in the industry who want to get into other areas. So that's kind of our plan at the moment. But as I say, we really need to be able to get into the schools and the colleges and to these careers people that you were talking about earlier to facilitate that for us.
Yeah, that's fine. And we're doing separate mailing, and it's not secret, but you're going to be joining us on the 9th of May at that event with the careers advisors, so that we can tell them about bringing students to the trade show. So but we'll do other mailings as well to support. Sian, you've got your hand up. You're on mute, my dear.
Thanks, Lorna. Faye, thank you for that. I wanted to ask if the two universities in Southampton were involved, because both have large maritime departments, and if not, do you think it would be worthwhile engaging with them?
Yeah, they do. We do have Southampton University, Solent University. They do have a stand at the exhibition. I think Solent does. We work with them. We do get mailings and stuff out to them, so they do help with us. I think we could do more with them. I mean, they have a presence, but again, reaching them having a presence to get people in is one thing, but us reaching their students and the people that are with them, yeah, that's kind of something we need to work on a bit.
And what about Southampton Uni?
Yeah, Southampton University are there. They are there. Yes, again, it's the same thing. They have a presence, and we get them to come along and talk about what they can offer people. But we also want to be able to reach their students to come along as well, to see what happens after university.
It might be worth us picking up a conversation outside here for that. So I'm a enterprise fellow at Southampton University, and one of my many jobs is to better engage with industry for the benefit of our students. So that kind of falls squarely within my remit, so it'd be great to have a chat with you.
Fantastic. If you see my email on the chat, if you just drop me a line and then we could catch up on it separately, that'd be brilliant.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
And another thought we've got some good contacts with Job Centre Plus, actually. I don't know if you're in touch with them about adult job seekers, but I can certainly connect you. There's I can't remember the job title, but it's basically business partnerships manager, I think, locally. I'll put you in touch with them as well, Faye, because I think that would be a good option. I think, if that's useful. I think if I ran a careers fair on a ship on the Thames. I did one last week, but that was different. But I did a careers fair on a ship on the Thames in London International Shipping Week, and we had the aft deck. It's the HQS Wellington. It's the most beautiful boat, and I go back there as often as I can. But the rear deck is covered with a long marquee, so that you can use it as semi-indoor space as well as outdoor space. And on the day of the careers fair, there were 250 children on board the boat, and the front of the marquee was open, so you were looking from the ship out onto the river. And there was I might have said this to you two before, I'm not sure, but there was a key moment where one of the people from the Port of London Authority put her hands on the shoulder of a young lad who was talking about apprenticeships and wanting to work on the water and want to work on the river and so on. And she put her hands on his shoulders because he was looking at the stands, and she turned him around to look out at the river. And in that moment, you started to see the River Thames as like an 8-lane motorway. And it's not just the ribs that the tourists are on that are bouncing up down the river, or the river police, or the kind of the transport, the Uber or the city cruises or whatever that are going up the river, but all the work boats. And it's one of those things. I think you used the word hidden, Andrea. I think it's, unless you're really looking, you don't even see that it's there. And I go back to my earlier point of saying, when I talk to schools and colleges about maritime, they talk about the headline, and the big flashy lights, the cruise ships, perhaps the Virgin ship that's been in Portsmouth. It's on its way back to Portsmouth now, I believe, at the moment from Liverpool, because you can't miss them on the skyline. They're big and they're white, or they're white and red, and they're flashy, and it's all, very glamorous and all the rest of it. And people are not seeing these opportunities. So anything that we can do to support you with that, and the LEPL through the Careers Hub, as I've said, we'll advertise this opportunity for local school and college children, but certainly I can connect you with Job Centre Plus, which I think is a good one. And yes, Sean and the other universities can probably help, but it's just opening the lid. It's like Pandora's box, isn't it? It's opening the lid on these careers that young people don't even know about. Now, can I ask about, you talked about apprenticeships, and I know you're not an employer, you're not a workboat employer, but are we talking about careers for young people starting at the age of 18 generally, or 21? You know, we talked about logistics earlier, and Gary talked about the Class 1 driving license not being available to anyone until they're 21. What sort of age are people coming into your industry?
If you looked at an organisation like Red Funnel, they would be taking apprenticeships on from 16 on, I would guess. And it goes right through to degree level, really, with marine engineers and technicians and harbour masters. So there wouldn't be an aspect of training or apprenticeships or higher education that wasn't relevant.
Okay, perfect.
And we picked a local company like, say, Williams Shipping in Southampton. They would recruit people on that whole spectrum.
And as with everything else that we talk about at Maritime, it's not just the jobs on the water, it's all the jobs that are on the shore in these businesses supporting the jobs on the water as well, isn't it? It's that whole infrastructure.
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. Okay. I don't know if anybody else has got any comments or any questions, or is anything that you want to come back with, Faye or Andrew. I'm very much looking forward to seeing you at Solent on the 9th of May. So I'm grateful for your time this morning, for your presentation, for your video. That's brilliant. And hopefully we'll all see you. I know I've met you, and I met you up at Glasgow in November, didn't I, Andrew? Briefly.
Yes,
but we'll get to meet you all properly on the 23rd of June. And I should just say that Stu Baker, our managing director, is also a speaker for you on that day at the conference, isn't he? He's coming to talk about free ports and Maritime UK Solent and all the rest of it. So that's brilliant. Thank you. So if there's no other comments, I'll just pull everything together. We're in danger of actually finishing early again today. These things never used to happen. There was one other thing that, and it's gone out of my head, I was going to talk to you about. Not you two, sorry, just generally. It will come back. It will come back. Okay, so just summing things up. I guess there was something else that I wanted to just open a conversation with those of you who are here today. Obviously, we're hoping to move over to face-to-face meetings. I was going to put it out to the audience this morning as to whether what you would prefer is for us to go into all face-to-face meetings, whether you want them to be monthly or bi-monthly, whether you'd like a face-to-face meeting and then a virtual meeting month about, whether they should be hybrid, and really just to get a little feedback from you, because obviously we're planning to go face-to-face. And as I've said to you, I've got these 3 dates: 21st of April at Skills Lab at Fareham College, 19th of May at the National Oceanography Centre, and then the 26th of June at Seawork. Oh, I've remembered what the other thing was I was going to say. At each of those events, there's an opportunity for one or two of you to give us that. Do you remember we used to have those networking meetings where different people used to talk about their businesses, and we were learning more about the breadth of the sector? So if there's anyone that would like to be a speaker, that would be very welcome if you want to get in touch with me. Right, I'm seeing a couple of things coming in. Hybrid will increase participation from those who cannot travel. Mix of the two, keep the virtual meetings going. Our carbon footprint will be impacted if we meet physically every month. Actually, that's a good point. I wonder if, yes, we should go maybe month about, or we've obviously got a little series of face-to-face meetings whilst we establish that. maybe we do one face-to-face and then we do a virtual meeting and then we do hybrid gets everyone. Paul, you're absolutely right. Running a hybrid meeting is all sorts of stress though. But that's okay. That's not a reason not to do it. It is just a reason to get everyone to do it. Do we think monthly is too frequent? Do we want to keep them monthly? I can cope. Oh, bless you. I love your confidence. Should we continue to do these monthly? Should we do them 2 monthly? I think we've seen in the last 2 or 3 meetings, we've seen a drop off in the numbers, and I'm not quite sure why that is, except that I know more people are back in the office, and whether that's complicated. We changed the day from a Wednesday to Thursday. We've got a new system as to how people book on, so there could be all sorts of things. I think what we'll probably do is do a short survey out to the whole network and gather some feedback from everybody, if you're all comfortable with that. Hybrid best, given busy diaries, no substitute for face-to-face networking, don't know. And Andy, Will and I used to promise people a coffee and a pastry. Those of you that have been with us from the beginning will remember, oh, maybe in a few months' time we'll actually get together and manage to have a breakfast. So in just summing up, so those dates again, 21st of April, 9 till 10:30 at Fareham College. We can accommodate up to 100 people. So hopefully we can just enjoy getting together. The 19th of May at the National Oceanography Centre, and then the 23rd of June at Seawork, when hopefully we'll all need our sunglasses because it'll be a beautiful day in June by then. We can run hybrid at Seawork. Oh, you're my best friend, Faye. Fabulous. I think probably, yes, that's the way forward, isn't it? That's life as it's going on. 9th of May at Solent Lep. Andy and Joe, who are both here from Solent Mares and the Royal Navy. We need to have a talk about the Royal Navy's participation in that event. I haven't had that conversation with you yet, but if that's something that you or your organisation would like to be part of, give me a shout. Construction face-to-face meeting on the 30th of March, if that affects you, if that's part of your business function as well. And then finally, with the post-meeting link to the recording and the comms and so on, we'll pop that link to the DFT Transport Skills Construction Survey consultation into that meeting. And if as many of you can complete that, we'd be really grateful. Apart from that, I think we've managed a meeting without my cat interrupting, so I'm tempted to run whilst the going is good. Thank you all. Thanks to our speakers. Thank you for your time, and hopefully I'll get to see a good number of you in person in April in Fareham. I'm almost too excited for words. Right, okay, that would be fantastic. Can't wait. Lovely. See you all next month. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Lorna.
Bye.
Thank you.